Hello and welcome to PM Express. My name is Nana Ansakwa IV, and today I'm here to talk to an amazing Ghanaian, Professor George Ofori. Now, this is a professor who started his life at KNUST and then went all the way to Singapore, the Singapore National University, and he was with the building department. He's now at Southwark University in London. Why do I want to talk to this man? This guy is a thespian when it comes to construction and building. I want to find out from him what it is that we are missing here. Indeed, we'll go all the way back to why, a son of Kwawu was born in Koforidua. What were they doing there? But the crunch of this interview is that what is Ghana missing for not bringing all the construction fraternities together? Because this is his expertise. And are we going to benefit from it? You stay tuned. This is an interview and a half. Thank you very much for staying. I'm sure with the intro you were thinking, do I know him? Do I not? Do I know him? Yes, some may know him, some may not, but it boils down to the fact that he's a gem, he's Ghanaian, he's one of us, and maybe it's time for him to come home. So we're here to find out how it is that this brain developed. How is it that this champion, lived most of his life in Singapore, now in the UK, and sniffing around Ghana. Let's grab him before it's too late. Prof, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
For granting me this interview. I know you're tight, but I had to get it before you go. But Prof, I want to go all the way back, somewhere in the 40s. I'm not going to give out the year. Somewhere in the 40s
yes.
in Koforidua. And I know you're not from Koforidua. Your roots are from Kwawu. So then I ask, what were you doing being born in Koforidua?
Yes. Okay. Well, I like to greet your listeners.
Sure.
And I'm extremely happy to be home. I'm very, very happy to be able to take part in this program.
Great.
The question brings me back many years, more than 60 years.
Wow.
I shouldn't say how many years, but more than 60 years. And I was born at Koforidua to parents who had come from the Kwawu area, but who also had quite a mixed background, because my grandmother was from Akropong before she went to Kwawu. Before then they came to Koforidua.
Wow.
And my grandfather was from Ashanti before his family moved to Kwawu. Before then, they came to Koforidua.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So my grandfather, I'm told, was born in 1900 when his father returned from the Yasantua War.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I was born at Koforidua. I went to school at Koforidua. My primary school, middle school were at Koforidua. And in those days, I went all the way and finished middle school.
So that would be San 4.
That would be standard 4 in those days. Yeah. So yes.
San 4.
Yes. So that would be standard 4 in those days. So I actually have a middle school leaving certificate, and I'm very proud of that too. Not many people have that.
Have you kept it?
I have, yes. I have all my certificates, and I have a testimonial also from my headmaster as well.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
So back then, you would actually finish standard 4 before you go to Form 1?
No, you would finish, if you were in Form 2, you could do the common entrance and go to secondary school.
Okay.
Or Form 3, you could also do the common entrance and go to secondary school. And you could also do it in Form 4.
But if you did,
making it a bit complicated, once you got to Form 4, there were some schools that were close to you. You couldn't go to those schools, the better schools.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but that's a bit complicated.
I see. Yeah. So you needed to cut off earlier to get to the better schools.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
I never knew that.
Well, it's a long time ago. So.
But so when you get to Form 4 and you come to secondary school, do you come back to Form 1 or?
You start from Form 1. Yes. In those days, they called it Secondary 1, so it was S1.
So what, you'd be older than your classmates? Or?
I was a little bit older, a year or two older than my classmates.
Well, that's not too bad.
And, because I also went to school very young.
Okay.
Yes, so I was more or less around the same age as my classmates. Yes.
Were you the sharp brain in the beginning, as you are in the end?
I cannot deny that. Yes,
good. Good.
I was doing my best. I like
great.
to say. Yes.
So from standard 4 secondary school, which one did you choose?
I went to Suhum Secondary Technical School. It was a very new school, which was had only just started. It was just 1 year old. So we joined the pioneer group.
Okay.
And we eventually considered ourselves actually to have been the pioneers.
Oh, you would?
Yes.
I can imagine what a new school would be like. All facilities new.
All facilities new, but we lacked many facilities
because it was still being built up.
Being built. Yes.
Okay.
The buildings were there, but creature comforts not up to.
I can imagine.
Not up to the level we needed. Yes.
But so whom was the secondary technical?
It was a secondary technical school.
Did you have enough technical, like the factories and the workshops?
We had two options. So the student would either do woodwork or do metalwork.
Wow.
And the woodwork shop had the basic tools, and it actually developed while we were there. I chose to do woodwork.
Okay.
The metal workshop also had basic facilities, but there was something that were also lacking. And some of my colleagues, some of my friends also did metalwork.
So you were a professional carpenter?
Yeah, so yeah, this is it. So at O level, there is a very interesting subject, compulsory, where you have to design an item and make it.
Okay.
Yes, you have to design it, submit the design, and also then make it in the workshop.
I see.
And submit the piece to be examined as well.
As a table, chair, a box?
Yeah, that's right. But there's a question, so you do what the question says you should design.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So you don't do what you want. Yes. So you design what the
do you remember what you were asked to do?
I think it was a question on a bookshelf.
Okay.
That I was asked to design. Yes.
That's so the bookshelf was very present.
The design, I think I did well in it, but my particular physical piece, I don't think was good. Yes.
That's interesting.
That's right.
So from Suhum, Fansipim, if I'm right?
Yes, from Suhum, I went to Fansipim school, and it was a big change.
I was going to ask.
Yes.
I was going to ask, how did you cope from, your woodwork,
yes.
and then all of a sudden it's all clerical and English and grammar?
Yeah, it was a big change. I mean, because I was still a science student, so we continued the things that we were doing, except that I dropped woodwork, but I did the physics, chemistry, and maths, and those were the basic subjects at A levels in those days.
Those were for the sharp boys.
And then you do the general paper.
Those were for the sharp boys. Physics, chemistry, biology, and ADMAS.
Yes, and the special maths, was also required. Yeah,
those were for the sharp boys. Those who went to discos and stuff couldn't do that. These were for the library.
Some of my friends were still enjoying those.
You see that?
Yes, that's right.
If woodwork had been at sixth form, would you have continue? Do you have any passion or love for it?
Not at the A level, no, because there wasn't much to actually do above. What I mean is beyond O level.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you wanted to be, because it wasn't something in those days that we were meant to take into a trade.
Oh,
we were just exposed to it, and we were taught how to do some very basic things, and that was all. But it generated interest in me in buildings. And that was why I went to Tech. And when I went to Tech, I did building technology.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then you did your national service there?
Then I did my national service at Tech, yes. I taught there for 1 year. In those days, the national service was 1 year. I think we were among the first group of students, graduates, to do the national service. Yeah.
So how did you end up in Singapore then?
Okay. So you want to know the entire history. So after, so after my first degree, stayed at Tech and taught for a year, and then I got a vacation job with at that time, the largest quantity surveying firm in Ghana. So I went to work for them. While I was working for them, I had also applied for a scholarship. And so I was given a Ghana government scholarship to go and study. And I chose to study at University College London. University College London, and I did a program which was actually not very old. It was quite new then. A program in those days, it was called Building Economics and Management. So that was my first degree. My second degree after the Building
Economics
and
Management.
That's right. And I think it made me who I then later became, because it was the only program at that time. There have been a few which have tried to imitate it, but I don't think have been very successful, but that's my very much biased opinion. It was the only program that was looking at the construction industry at the macro level.
Okay.
Most programs would look at construction projects, but we were taught to look at the construction industry at the macro level. So government policy, strategic development, and developments and issues that would help improve performance on project sites were some of the things that we were dealing with, whereas others were very much dealing with the nitty-gritty of project sites.
That's good. So, so from London, do you come back to Ghana or you continued?
So from London, so after my master's, I was again fortunate. I was given another Ghana government scholarship to do a PhD.
Okay.
Yeah, so I studied for a PhD in the same school under my the head of my school, who then became my supervisor, and another person who became a very important person in my life. I've been very fortunate to meet very good people along the way. And these two persons were these two persons that supervised my PhD were very, very helpful to me. Nice. So they became more or less family friends and the godparents of my children and things like that, yeah.
Oh, I see, that's good. Oh, well then, so you have to come back and do your, or you've done it, have you been to serve your national service then?
Yeah, I'd already done my national service at Tech, remember? I did when I was teaching
but after the scholarship, have you come back?
Okay, so after the scholarship, that's yes. So there was an obligation in the contract, well, in the scholarship agreement, that I would come back home for 2 years.
Okay.
And so I did.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So I was going to.
Yes, so I came home for 2 years and worked in a quantity surveying firm.
Okay.
Yes.
And did that for 2 years.
Yes.
I mean, you've done a lot. I don't know, was Singapore an ideal for you? Because this was a really growing country.
Yes.
And there's you who've studied, micro level construction.
Yes.
It's like the fufu falling back into the soup.
Exactly. So Singapore was ideal. Why was it ideal? Because this is what I tell most people, and this is also what I write, that the government, even in those days, really understood the construction industry. The government in Singapore understood the construction industry, understood what the industry needed, understood what needed to be done to improve the industry, because it realized that it needed a strong construction industry if it was to meet its development objectives. So I went to Singapore December 1983. In early 1984, the government set up an agency. It was called the Construction Industry Development Board. It wasn't the first in the world, it was the second in the world. The first one had been set up in Tanzania. Okay. And I had, I did a bit of work for them before I went to Singapore. Yeah.
Construction, like a construction, so it looks after the construction industry.
Yes. So whereas other governments would take the construction industry, I wouldn't say for granted, but would not actually give it particular direct attention. This was one of the real examples of where the government said, we have an industry, we must improve it. And so this agency was charged with, this were the words, spearheading the expansion and improvement of the construction industry in the country. Yeah.
But these are not government construction; these are private.
Yes, yes. So when we say construction, we do not mean the contractors only. We actually mean the entire process that leads to from the planning to the design to the tendering for projects to the actual building of the items, and also to the looking after the items after they've been built until they are knocked down. So this is the entire process. Wow. And governments that understand this whole process then would put in measures to try to see how, from one stage to another, performance can be improved.
I mean, listening to you now,
yes.
It means you can't leave it for chance. You can't leave it
okay,
to chance.
So this is when I was I was going to say when I was a child, but when I was doing my masters, my lecturer said, clients get the construction industry they deserve because they do not make the effort to, this is me explaining what she said, what she meant. It's because they do not make the effort to understand the industry, and they do not take the effort to do what the industry needs or what the industry requires them to do in order for the industry to do better for them. And so she says they get the industry they deserve, because we Yeah, we take the industry for granted. In the end, that's what perhaps we would say. So it doesn't happen by accident. It happens through careful management and real deliberate, systematic attempts to improve its performance.
Prof, I want to say, you know, as a developing country, when you have so much need, sometimes boreholes, sometimes a place of convenience.
That's right.
Would you still, you know, have space to say, listen, in spite of all this, let's look at construction because we could go wrong? Or you say, look, put construction at the back. Once we've sorted all this out, we'll come back to it.
Yes, because actually, if you look at it, you will know that we shouldn't say in spite of. We should say because of all this, we must make sure that we have a strong construction industry. Oh, because the borehole is done by the construction industry. We don't always understand that. We don't always appreciate that. Most of the things that we do in our country are actually done by the construction industry or rely on an aspect of the construction industry. Actually,
because all the things are listed, the roads, the hospitals, and everything.
Yes, but you see, the roads and the hospitals are, you know, they are the ones that are created that enable us to be looked after, if you like, that enable us to travel, that enable us to do various other things. But there are many, many other things that are done by the construction industry that we don't always appreciate and recognize. It will take me too long to be, but
I know, but this is turning out to be a whole different dimension. It's turning out to be a whole different dimension. So Singapore identified this and put construction sort of, look, it has to be a priority.
Yes, well, they recognize that, exactly as you said, it doesn't happen by accident. They recognize that it happens by deliberate action. It happens by, you know, preparing plans, doing a policy, having regulation, enforcing regulation, taking action when needed, providing incentives, providing support, educating, building capacity, building awareness, getting people on your side. It's very, very complicated. But all these then have to be done. And to do it, I think an agency is key. Yeah, and that was why they had that agency. And since then, the exercise had been attempted in other countries and to various degrees of success. My next question, you sort of answered that. Yes. Is this something that can only be done in Singapore? Can you move it out of Singapore? Because you know, sometimes, you know, politicization, sometimes you know, changing of government too frequently. I mean, if you put all these factors together, can you have a constructing agency? Yes. So this is why the agency actually is a statutory agency. There's a law. It is set up by statute, by law. So there's an act that sets up the agency. And so it runs. The government appoints from country to country, the governments have taken different approaches to who they appoint to be on the board, who they appoint to be the board of directors. In South Africa, it's very interesting. You actually apply to be considered to be a member of member of the board. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. In Singapore, they have also said that. Okay, in most places, what you have will be representatives of the stakeholders. Okay, but in Singapore, what they have said is that it is not necessarily so. So they actually appoint people who they believe will make a difference. Will actually do the job. Yeah, so that's how it is. But then they also have representatives, but it's not just left only to the stakeholders.
Prof, you're from Singapore and you're from Ghana. Now you're a citizen of both countries now.
No, I'm not a citizen of Singapore. I'm 100% Ghanaian.
100% Ghanaian, good. That's even better.
Yes.
We have a vibrant construction industry.
Yes.
You know, everybody's building apartments everywhere, and there's always some activity going on.
Yes.
And you know, we sometimes peg the development of the nation as to how many, you know, concretes are coming up and stuff like that.
True.
Yeah. You think they should consolidate a bit more, or where are we going wrong and where are we going right?
Yes, okay. In the industry development, I think what we have established is that it is a deliberate action, and so it has to be done. It does not just occur; it has to be done. So the effort, I would also say, has to be something that is well thought out, because otherwise you can actually realize the opposite of what you set out to achieve. And so what we need is, it's a determination, a policy direction, and a combination of contributions. So a coalition of like-minded organizations, not only in the government, on the government side, but also on the private sector side, to actually pull together and help us to do better as a nation, and as a nation, because I think we deserve a much better construction industry.
Doc, so once you, assuming we got them all together, yes, under an agency or ministry, as right, Ministry of Construction, yes, what do you do? Do you give them tax incentives? Do you give them, I mean, why should we come together? I mean, I have yes, my money, I'm building, and yes, I'm going, why do I have to come under some umbrella? What do I get, as a policy direction to help? Is there any examples?
Yes, yes. So I think this question always comes up. So what is in it for me? Because we must encourage people to know that it is very much in their interest to for us to be building better, for us to be building cheaper, for us to be completing our projects faster, for us to be building to a higher level of quality, for us to be building to such an extent that they are safe in these buildings and that their health is looked after, for us to be building to the extent that the buildings are so durable that they can actually hope to lead them to their their children and their children's children, and so on. And all these are the results of attempts to really improve performance in the industry. Yes, and so all of us benefit if we have an industry that does that.
At the moment, yes, I mean, I don't have a slightest clue of how to build
yes,
a house, but
yes,
I mean, I could get a set of blocks together and go and dig up somewhere, yes, and start, just putting up a structure.
Yes.
Are you saying under such an agency, these things will be stopped? Nope.
Okay, yeah. All right. So under such an agency, the intention is to set standards and to hold to these standards. To set standards, to have regulations, and to hold to both. As to who does it, it's not material. And then once we have the standards, once we have the regulations, we also, I think, would want to enhance expertise, build capacity in order for, for these standards, these regulations not to be obstacles to us attaining what we want. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we want to do better, but we also don't want to do fewer just because we want to do better.
I see.
Yes. So that's why it's a multi-dimensional process, yes, to tackle.
Do you think Singapore was lucky, as in maybe they identified the problems earlier and got solutions much earlier? I'm comparing us to now because here, Ansakwa land, I can just yes, catch a piece of yes, land, Ansakrum, yes, and just start yes, building. Yes. And then when I finish, I come to you, ECG, yes, yes, bring me electricity. I ride to the roads minister, bring that's us right, roads yes, and everything. Do you think they saw that problem and solved it earlier?
Yes.
Or we still have hope to?
I think we still have hope because Singapore, it didn't develop overnight. Mm-hmm. It developed very fast. It did very well. But it saw what it needed to do, and it actually did it. And so their first Prime Minister has written books. One of them that I'd like to highlight to people is how he describes how Singapore developed from very much a typical developing country to what it is today. And there are photos that are shown. And for those who are interested, maybe later on you can give them my email. They can write to me. I will point them to some publications on Singapore, actually showing.
No, from the third world to first world.
Yes, from third world to first.
From third world to first
yes,
world. Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, I read snippets of that book.
Yes,
but I'll still want your email anyway because I'm sure there are people who want to, because there are 81 articles and research materials, so you would want to do that.
That's right.
Yeah. But, Doc, one of your research materials is looking at using, indigenous building material. Yes. I also finding amazing why we are so fixated on cement.
Yes.
And we sit on 90% laterite.
That's right.
But you are the construction expert, so maybe you can help me. So you can help me.
Yes. I would not say I'm an expert in the technology of clay, but my PhD was looking at, in my PhD, I actually drew up a plan for improving the construction industry in Singapore. And materials development is one of the, if you like, planks of developing the industry. And in that, I was looking at what the Building Areas Research Institute was doing. This was a long time ago. But the BRI had done quite a lot of work on laterite. They call it land crate blocks. And they had actually done quite a lot of work on how we could reduce the amount of cement we use in making blocks and still actually have quite durable buildings and so on. They had also something that it escaped us for a while. They had developed a way of finishing the laterite in a good way so that it looked as if, if you want to say, it looked as if it was actually concrete blocks that they had to use. So it was very smooth and looking very well. So BRI has done quite a lot of work. And what I also found recently is that they actually have courses trying to train people to use these kinds of materials. And sometimes, you see, when we develop local materials or new materials, we assume that the skills that we had before would be able to be very quickly transferred into this. In many cases, we actually need to develop new skills in order to do that. And once we realize that, then it means we must build the capacity for that.
One thing I find in the construction industry, well, in Ghana, because I don't have experience with that, it seems to be like they all follow the wind. So 1 minute it's all going this way, certain colors, certain window patterns, certain roof styles, and then all of a sudden it changes this way, certain walls, certain gates, certain lighting. You know, is it a character of construction?
Yes, because there are different styles of that is where the architects come in. The architects have various styles, but in this case, actually, it may not be influenced by the architect's styles. It's influenced by the user. The user says, "I've seen Mr. Say's house looking like this, and I want something similar." And they say it has to be done for the user. Yes.
I see.
That's right.
I see.
So those are also things that we need to address. You know, really educating people, because going back to your question about indigenous materials. So apart from using laterite, we also had a period where I think we had a government which built brick factories in many of the districts, okay? And so, but that also didn't last long. I think the users were not very much, I don't know, but this is my view, that perhaps the users were not ready to move from the traditional concrete, concrete blocks, which were associated with progress, you know, to a new material which they were not sure.
Sort of your cutting cost, sort of.
So
I don't want to use cheap.
Exactly.
I'm trying hard not to use cheap.
Yes. So that then also explains the question, the point you made as to how trends in design, in the way buildings look, also develop, because people want to be seen to also to be doing more or less what is in vogue.
If we had a constructing agency, could they have, you know, maybe marketed the brick to make it more trendier and encourage their users to use brick instead of going to the cement?
Yes. So then that gives me an opportunity to talk about construction industry development. What does it mean? Okay. So it means they're talking about the first one, because we are talking about people. It means having the qualified people. So we talk about human resource development. That's number one. Second one is materials development, what we were talking about just now. Materials development, meaning that we actually have the inputs that we need in order to create what we want to create. Now, as to whether we import it or actually do it locally, is something for us as a people and to actually decide on. And the third one is technology development. And technology development today must also include IT, information technology also. And then you must also link material development to technology development, and then back to skills development. Okay, so those three, because the people need to be, you know, given the tools, given the techniques, and to use the materials, and so on and so forth. So those three are very closely linked. Then comes the procedures, the contracts, the documentation that you need, and all these they can be supporting. They can also be impeding. They can be frustrating. They can be, you know, helpful or not helpful. The procurement approach you adopt and things like that. Then comes the operating environment of the industry. So, for example, if a contractor wanted to borrow money, how easy would it be for the contractor to borrow money? What about the regulations? What about the laws? In what way are they stifling? In what way are they helping? That's right. And these are, if you like, these are the key elements. Then the final one I like to say is institution building. Institution building in both the public sector and the private sector. in the public sector, institution building is my pet topic, having the kind of agency that we've just been discussing. But the private sector also must develop their institutions as well. And I believe a strong private sector is a very useful partner to the public sector.
I'm going to take a break here. When I come here, my pet subject is environmental protection and sustainability. Now, construction is one thing which completely degrades environment. And so how do you link grow construction and protect environment? Don't go, we are coming back. Well, what did I say? Shut a sharp brain, engine home slowly. So hopefully we'll get him soon. Professor George Ofori, Prof. Here you are, you know, a pro constructionist, if there's such a word. And that's me, you know. I'm a tree hugger. You know, anything green, anything nature. And I'm all sentimental, and sometimes I don't want to discuss it because I may not make sense. You know, I prefer protect the river, my seas, but you know, construction is one, I think, fierce enemy towards environment, chopping down trees, blocking this. You know, so how do we combine the two so they don't conflict?
So you have if you like, a soulmate, because I'm also, I would not say I'm a tree hugger, but I'm also an environmentally conscious person.
Good.
Okay, in a very long time ago, before, I'll talk about now. Today there is a movement in construction. It's called green building. Although it only just looks at the environmental aspects of the sustainability, you know, umbrella or spectrum. It is saying that we need to perform better when it comes to our impact on the environment. So green building is a movement that is, you know, that has taken root in many countries. And so most countries have something that is called a Green Building Council. And the one in Ghana has, I think, only recently been formed. And also most countries have, they're using assessment schemes that enable us to, if you like, determine the extent to which the building we're going to build would have an impact on the environment.
Well, sorry to come in here. Doc, I don't know if you've traveled to most of your friends' houses, but I've been complaining that our buildings are, you know, we build such that we use too much energy. Because as soon as you build, block it with glass and everything, go for the beauty, forget about the design, and then whack an air conditioner, in it.
That's right.
I mean, is this something that construction can look at, or this is purely architectural?
And it's actually both. It is both, and the architects are also very much on board. So the green building councils that I'm talking about, they're actually multi-stakeholder organizations, including both the public sector and the private sector, and especially spanning the entire spectrum of the construction industry. So architects, including planners as well, architects, planners, and engineers from across the spectrum of engineering. They are all involved in this, and they will look at various aspects of it. Now, energy conservation is one of the big issues that they look at, and in places where, maybe I have to go back to Singapore. In a place like Singapore, energy is the big, if you like, the biggest concern that they've had. So from time immemorial, they have had something called the overall thermal transmittance value of your building when you design it. And you needed to have a certain figure before the building is approved.
That's clever. So you tell us how much energy.
So how much energy, how much heat the building absorbs into it, because they use a lot of air conditioning, and the more energy the building absorbs, the more heat the building absorbs, the more energy you have to use to cool the building down.
So you have to build the building to have ability to cool itself down.
So that
you use less air conditioning.
The ability not to actually take in too much. And we actually have ways and means of doing it. We can do it in a passive way. The passive design means having sun shading devices, having overhangs and so on, which do not do not let in too much heat into the building. Okay. And then we talk about lighting. So we also have passive design allows us to make the best use of natural, the natural sunlight during the day, so that we reduce the amount of artificial lighting we have to use during the day. Yeah,
I see.
So passive design allows us to use natural ventilation instead of having air conditioning and so on and so forth. Now, all these are things that architects actually have been teaching. They taught me. Architects taught me when I was studying as a young person and so on. So there are things that we know, but we then that comes to the point that I was making earlier, that users sometimes influence how the buildings tend to look like. So people want something beyond that, and therefore it means that there has to be so instead of passive is now active, for example, ventilation or active design, where we must then bring in the machines, to cool the building down, and we have fans, we have air conditioning units as well.
Prof, how frustrated do you get?
Yes.
Because your line of work is pretty much in your face everywhere you go.
Yes,
that's true. Pretty much in your face.
Yes.
So, I mean, when you come to Ghana, how frustrated do you get knowing that, look, with 1 or 2 tweaks, we could have, gone that way?
Yes. So I'm very hopeful. I'm a Ghanaian, and I'm very keen that we do what we can I do. Okay. I speak about myself. I do what I can to help my country to progress and to grow. And the only area that I'm good at is industry development. And what I can contribute is what I consider to be perhaps what could be done to ensure that we have an industry that I believe that we deserve as a nation.
See, Doc, by the time we wake up to realization, the bill will probably be infinite, where we're completely built up, where you'd have to now demolish, replan, reshape. So we seem to be racking up a repair bill which we haven't even started yet.
Yes, I understand that. But I was thinking that we have already got to the point where we have realized that we should sit back and think a little bit more.
No, on paper.
Or you don't think we have?
No, on paper we have, but in reality, no.
Yes.
Because you'd be surprised.
Then I have to ask you a question. So this is the interviewing the interviewer. Yes. So what do you think we need to do in order to move from realization on paper to actual realization in reality and in practice?
Well, I've done my part to make sure that I talk to you before you go, so that they get from what you say.
Yes,
but Doc, would you be surprised that a place like Ebri hasn't got a plan?
Actually, yes. This is something that many countries are grappling with. I recently did a study in Indonesia, and they are also looking at this issue, because now the technology is available to do these things using computers and so on, scanning satellite things, and it's not my area, but GPS, geographical information systems technology allows us to capture our cadastral information in a systematic way. I think maybe I wouldn't say it's an advantage to be starting late, but I think our excuses are being taken away gradually, one by one, because the technology is there. And it's going to be much easier and perhaps less forgivable if we do not do what we need to do.
Because I have an engineer friend who's developing in Ebri and rings the council to find out, look, where is the road going to be, so I do something. And they were like, no, there's no plan. So it's just as you build along, you plan along, and that's why I keep saying that by the time we realize how much houses to break down and roads to widen, it will be such a big deal. But I'll tag into your hope.
Well, yes. Well, because I think we have got to a point where. Okay, maybe I cannot say definitively, but I will say, okay, where we should have realized that we have to do something.
I know you've done a lot about construction in developing countries.
Yes.
what should they do? What should construction in development, aside the agency, which I know you've the pet, what is construction in a developing country? I mean, developing country looks as if one whole construction site, isn't it?
It is, yes. So yes. So this is it. So my point is that while we do our development, we should also recognize that we have a construction industry that should be developed at the same time. So we should enable the industry we should enable our countries to benefit from the development of our physical items that we need to attain our economic development. So we shouldn't develop at the expense of, if you like, at the expense of our industry, because if we have an industry that has actually grown and developed by doing the things that we need, it then builds up the capacity to do things better for us in future, number one. But also, in many countries, they export this expertise as well. So that is also a possibility.
Now, my wife is a gender activist.
Yes.
And her program is 10 years old now. So I'm going to throw one question in for her.
Okay.
And that's women leaders breaking the glass ceiling in Singapore's construction industry.
Yes.
I mean, are you encouraging women to go to, you need this construction, you need to have a steady BP.
Yes.
You need to have a very low cholesterol.
It's true, yes.
It's not for the faint-hearted.
No, it's not. But it's a very interesting industry. Yes, and we have there are many roles in construction, and I use the word construction in the big form to include also areas that people don't always think of as construction, because these areas contribute to developing the things that we need. These areas include planning. They also include architecture and so on. And many of the very, very good architects are women.
Is it because of patience or diligence?
No, I was going to go there. I mean, about patience and diligence. I was going to go there. Many contractors, at least I know in Singapore, actually prefer women when they're looking for quantity surveyors.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
Because quantity surveying requires meticulous care in calculating figures and in measuring things. And women are better at that, yes. So there are areas in the industry where women are very much better. And when it comes to actually working on site with hands and so on and so forth, then you don't see too many women. But I think the opportunity to do well in the construction industry it's not restricted only to working on site. So there are opportunities for women.
For women, well, that was a question for my wife.
Yes, that's right. Yes, the area where, in fact, some students of mine have done work is what about when it comes to the project manager? The project manager is the leader of the team. In what way are women, I wouldn't say just encouraged, but actually able to perform well as project managers? And from time to time, women project managers actually win awards in countries. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. For being the best in the year that we're talking about.
Look, let me push you towards a bit of politics, but we'll make it we'll make it partisan.
But I know nothing about politics.
Yes, we'll make it partisan. Yes. I want to find out how the construction growth and stability in Singapore, the stability in their politics, Lee Kuan Yew staying in power for a considerable number of time and following his agenda. How did it help compared to if it came here and every 4 or 8 years we'll be moving and you're not my friend there, so let me put my friend in.
There I will have to say I will not mention Singapore because you already have highlighted it. I will have to talk about a place where there are frequent changes in government. The point that I will make is if we award projects on merit, if we engage people on merit, then it doesn't matter who is in power.
Yeah.
Yes, and that is an element of the industry that I wish very strongly that we have in this country. Yes. Merit. And so there are various tenders that we are looking at, because the tendering process, the law guards it, the law regulates it. Okay, so if we follow what the law says we should do, and if we really do it and you know, the point system or whatever, you know, needs to be done, and we actually score and we award projects on the same lines as the law says we should, then it will not matter who is actually in power.
I think that's a big that's a big answer, not a big answer.
But then the question is the if.
Yes. The if.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's one thing.
And that it's beyond me because I'm not involved in the.
No,
I've
of
never
course
been involved
not.
in the process.
No, of course not.
Yes.
And I mean, are you hoping to come to settle? And if you come,
yes.
would you go into the academia or you go into the industry?
Yes. If I come, I would not go into academia full time.
Okay.
But I will be totally, completely available. My job is mentoring.
Okay.
That's what I say.
Okay.
My job is mentoring, and I'll be totally, completely available and at the disposal of the younger ones, to to help them to enable them to realize that we actually have an obligation to our country.
Would you champion the agency?
Okay, now the agency, I also have a bit of history with it because I've been engaged to do studies in Ghana, one which was specifically dedicated to considering how Ghana would form such an agency. Yes.
Did your studies prove that it's possible?
Well,
I mean, we have carpenters, steel benders in every corner.
Yes.
And these are all part of your...
Yes, they are. And I think this, if you like, let's call it fragmentation in the industry. All right? It's a perception that we have. At the same time, also, it provides opportunities for us to see how we can benefit from these. Because once someone is doing something and doing it, becoming an expert in it, becoming a specialist in it, he becomes better and better and better and better.
Did you look into standardization? Because that's one thing which we're lacking here.
Yes.
Can we bring standards here?
Yes. So standardization. So when we talk about standardization, it's about uniformity in terms of what we are doing. Uniformity in terms of what we are doing, and when it comes to say quality, what can you expect? That is one. But that is a standard that I want us always to be aspiring towards. You know, that we're pushing ourselves to do the very best that we actually can, and we're pushing ourselves to do the very best that the job that we have been given requires. Okay. But standardization is also used in construction to mean that we make items, say doors, even blocks or bricks, to standard sizes, so that there's less cutting and fitting on site in order to fit them together. And once we have standardized, then it is possible to make these items not on site, but away in a factory. So standardization then allows prefabrication. Prefabrication can be taken to higher and higher levels, and today they're talking about volumetric prefabrication, where the whole bathroom is actually made off-site, brought to the site, and installed. And that's what they're doing in the UK and also in Singapore. Yes. The idea is to try and expedite the construction process. And in some cases, it also leads to a reduction in cost as well. Yeah.
Is there no reduction in labor?
Pardon?
Is there no reduction in labor?
Okay. Now, the reduction in labor is if you like, is the target in a place like Singapore, because Singapore doesn't have the workers. And so the intention is to improve productivity in order to reduce the reliance on the foreign workers that the country is having to use in the construction industry.
What a weird problem to have. Coming from Ghana, it looks like a very weird problem.
That's right. Because one of the key features of the construction industry is its ability to create jobs. That is one. The second feature that is also very important is its ability to create jobs where the job is actually done, where the work is actually done. Because construction, we say in academia, construction is location specific. You cannot make it elsewhere and bring it. You have to do it where it is needed. So this building has to be built here. It couldn't have been built, say, in Intima and moved and transported. So if jobs are going to be created, they'll be created in this locality. So on the road, and the roads that we build, the bridges that we build, and the dams that we build, and any of these items that we are building, we can create the jobs where the items are needed. So construction sometimes is said to be a driver or the balance wheel of the economy.
Doc, last question to you before I end is, how much are we missing by semi-lignating the construction fraternity? How much are we missing out?
Then I'll also take the opportunity, in answering that, take the opportunity to highlight some areas that I think Ghana needs to look at, because the rest of the world is looking at them. The first one is this area of using information technology. Okay. Today we're talking about building information modeling, or BIM. Building information modeling, this is where the building that you're going to build is actually not just done using computers in a drawing format, but it's done using computers in a block format. So you actually see the building itself as you're going to be building. And this information can be used for many things as well. In Singapore today, it's compulsory for you to submit your drawing. If you're going to submit it for approval, it has to be in the building information modeling format. Otherwise, it's not accepted. So
you build a little clay house of your house?
No, you do it on computer.
Yeah. So they can actually look.
Yes. And because as you're doing it also, it checks for you where you comply with the law and where you don't comply with the regulations and where you don't comply with the regulations. Yes. So it's a checking thing, as well as one that eventually will be approved or not approved. So that's the first one. So the first one is technology. The second one is what we were talking about just now, the environmental issues, the environmental aspect as well. It's something that we should be, we have, I believe the new Ghana Green Building Council that has been formed is going to help us to go there, because there is something that I didn't, I think I've spoken about the assessment schemes in various countries. We have not yet developed one for Ghana, but there is one that the World Bank's, the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, has developed, which I think is being used here in Ghana.
Okay, so because of timing, my last question again is, how much are we losing by, I will not say total neglect, but semi-neglecting the construction institution, fraternity, body?
Yes.
How much is the country losing?
It's a lost opportunity the point I made earlier is that we should use the development or the work that we are doing to improve the performance of our industry. And so long as we do not have systematic ways of using these projects that we're doing to develop our industry, then we are losing.
Professor George Ofori, what did I tell you? Brilliant interview. And as I always say, until I come back to you next time with a different personality, that was a beautiful conversation, worthwhile noting down. Prof, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Nana.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.